Hey everyone, welcome back to the MMT Center for Monetarists Who Can't Do Economics Good live stream. I have Bijou with me this week for what is going to be a little bit more laid back, a little bit more fun live stream. Yeah.
Douglas going to do some unintentional jokes to begin with.
If you haven't seen Zoolander, you'll haven't the slightest clue what the thumbnail was about, or what it is I'm talking about. But go check out Zoolander. I think it was an early 2000s movie. Hilarious. Yeah, but tonight's going to be a fun one. We got some good things lined up. We have some good topics to hit tonight. Obviously, the FOMC meeting today. If you're a market watcher, markets absolutely exploded. We're going to start off there for a little while, talk about how the Fed still doesn't understand what the hell it is that they're doing, and that no one understands what the hell the Fed actually does, except MMT. So we'll hang out there for a little while, talk. The Fed keeps giving us some good things to talk about. So we will talk about that. How was your week, Bijou, as we let people roll in?
Yeah.
Good week?
Just trying to tackle the financial press a little bit, as my MMT side of things. And I'll let you, expand upon that theme a little bit. So as well as trying to sort of get your head around the financial press, understanding MMT, it's like both laughing and crying at the same time. So it's a bit of a thing to wrap your brain around that. And also I'm actually very interested in developing this whole theme of, MMT kind of knows what the Fed does, or knows about fiscal and monetary policy and their relative effects and influences. However, having said that, there's all the psychology surrounding it.
Yep.
And the psychology has impacts that MMT doesn't, even pretend to describe. It's like it's a more sort of interesting thing. What happens when you've got everything backwards and you're acting on that sort of false knowledge of what your policy is doing, is a very interesting thing, because sometimes it can have not just perverse effects, but it can have some of the effects you want just because you're pressing the psychology. And that's all the very complicated stuff that I don't really understand so well, because I'm just thinking more in pure MMT terms to begin with. And then there's all that whole layer underneath, So anyway, but that's a whole long topic to dig into, over a long period of time to try and understand all that. But do you want to say anything about the financial press? Or their tools that they've got in their little tool chest.
Bijou and I were just talking about this before we went live. I saw a tweet by a guy who I have moderate respect for his views, in the sense that he's made posts in the past. He's a finance guy that at least seems to indicate that he understands the core basics of monetary operations and fiscal operations, and he'll understand that banks don't lend deposits, that he gets endogenous money. Also, by the way, hello Josh, hello Always Learning. Welcome. If you are just tuning in, make sure you hit that like button. If somehow you're here, not subscribed, get subscribed, but hit the like button. The algorithm likes it. I like it too. We should do what we did last week, and I have some amazing things to share with you when we finally hit 10 likes. So hit that like button. Let's see. I distracted myself.
The Fed's tools, and they're they're declaring a fight against inflation. Okay, so how they're going to achieve that when the inflation is coming from still supply bottlenecks? A lot of workers still getting sick from COVID, or secondary effects of COVID. A lot of people dropping out of the workforce. So you raise the interest rate to fix those people up.
Yeah.
And
to get full production. Yeah. I think where I was going is I saw a guy tweet out his podcast that what the Fed still has more work to do. And we were talking about this, and just so you guys know, when you see these things, I don't have the slightest clue what the hell they're meaning either. I don't get what the press means that the Fed has more work to do. If you're confused, I'm confused too. I don't know what that means. What possibly could the Fed do to fight inflation in any meaningful way raising interest rates. And then what does it mean that they still have work to, yeah, it does sell. I mean, that's why they do it. So what does it mean that they have work to do? I don't know. I don't know what it means. I don't know what they're trying to get at. Obviously, hiking rates isn't doing much. I mean, it's as we went over during the last live stream, certainly there are valuations and using discounted cash flow and other net present value, cash flow style valuations that will shift the asset price, but it's not doing anything to create greater real output. So the big thing that did come out of today is the massive stock rally that finished the day. And I just posted, if you're on the Patreon feed, you'll know this. I just posted the daily dashboard, my commentary that I put out every night, or sometimes earlier the next morning. And it's very easy to take a victory lap right now. Obviously, I've been bullish. It's very easy to take a victory lap, but I will tell you, the dust really settles the following day after an announcement like this. And then also we're going to have jobs data on Friday. And what likely happened today was less that the market's like, oh yeah, the Fed's back on our side, whatever. Usually what happens is you get investors that are worried about an announcement like today, and they buy puts as insurance. And when you buy a put, someone's selling you that put. It's usually not another market participant that's making a bet. It's usually someone that doesn't have a directional, that doesn't want any directional exposure. And how do you get rid of directional exposure? Well, you sell. So if you take the opposite bet, if someone bets that the market's going to go down, if you think the bet is that the market is going to go down, and someone on the other side doesn't want any directional risk from that, the way that they would hedge the other side of that is actually by selling the market when they take that other side. That's how you'd hedge against that. So what happens is people make bets that the market might go down, or not bets, but they're just hedging the market might go down. That creates downward pressure on price. And then when those options get lifted, right, when they get closed, when it turns out that it's not as bad as they thought it was going to be, that closing of the puts creates this ripple effect that pushes higher, and then it turns out to be a bit of a domino effect. So I think that's what we saw today. The question is really, how does the dust settle tomorrow? I mean, there's only 2 hours from the Fed rate hike announcement, and then 30 minutes following is the press conference. So you only got 90 minutes as the day finishes. It's the next day where the dust settles, and so. Yeah.
Michael Burry mentioned in the chat there.
Yeah. Michael Burry tweeted out to sell. He's been really, like, people pick on Jim Cramer for being wrong and going opposite Jim Cramer. Michael Burry has been as equally wrong as Jim Cramer over the last decade. Really? I mean, he obviously got the Big Short thing right, and people love him for that. Yeah. But Nick, that's the big joke on the Twitter, is that he needed to get out, so he told everyone to sell, so he could get exit liquidity. And maybe he is that savvy, and got people to got people to go at them. So I mean, my thought is this market is looking strong. It has nothing to do with the Fed. Meta came out, big earnings beat, again, better than expected. I've been hammering this home on Twitter, that we just keep seeing this better than expected data keep rolling out, and that's really going to be the theme for 2023 here as we're kicking off this better than expected. So Fed announcement and pretty bullish outcome. But again, I'm really excited to see, or really not excited, but I'm interested to see how the jobs data comes out on Friday. One of the liquidity guys that I follow said the overall skew for the volatility market looks heavier for Friday's job decision than it did the FOMC. This was before yesterday, but so we'll see if we'll see how the jobs data comes out, and I'm going to expect it to be relatively strong, obviously, and I don't think we're, of course, anywhere near a recession. But that will, recession or not, or jobs data or not, it's really the short-term hedging stuff that will be the determinant factor on the short-term trend. But long-term trend, we continue to see follow through on the very strong data. So that's where we're at. Bijou, if you want to step in,
the tool they've got. I mean, changing interest rate, it is a tool. It can do things. They don't chip away things. But you know what I would say is that if they're really serious, it's kind of like the tool where you're on a skateboard on ice and you're trying to sort of move around, and all you can do is kind of move yourself left and right. If you do that aggressively enough, there's a bit of friction, and you can actually kind of, dawdle along. You can actually move your economy, your body that way, right?
Yep.
So
yep.
the Fed, what they can do is they can massively hike rates up and then pull them down, and then just go back and forth like that. If they time it right, I tell you, this can have a massive effect. But of course, that's just insane, right? This is so they have a tool. They could use it in a certain way if they understood how it worked. But it's just like that's just pure sort of like a mathematical type thought experiment. This is how they could do it. Change in interest rate can have a big effect. But you got to keep on changing.
Yeah,
up and down, up and down, up and down, like a sort of madman, right?
Yeah,
that's just so. Compared to fiscal policy, is like someone comes out with their Zambini, and sort of like moves you along the ice like a steamroller or something.
Yeah.
That's the analogy, and you just don't see that in the financial press. However, you did prop up this graphic on Meta, which you hadn't talked to me about. What's going on there?
Oh, they just beat earnings. They beat earnings. I don't even know what the headline is. I think the headline refreshed from now to when I pull it up, because I think it was just a beats earnings thing. But Meta year
to me, I see that as a whole lot of activity in like cyberspace that's not doing much at all. But it is sort of moving money around, I guess, into certain pockets, and you'd hope the people would actually spend it on whatever groceries and that. So all these people earning profits from Meta, it's like, where is that going? What good is that doing?
Yeah, I'm not.
You're probably going to tell me that people are doing things inside Meta.
No, I can't imagine they are. I don't.
No, they're just not doing something else that could be useful.
My point.
If they teach MMT inside the metaverse.
And inside of it. Yeah, my point is not that Meta is a great company to buy. My point is that we continue to. Oh, there it is. Meta reported better than expected fourth quarter earnings or revenue.
Okay.
And it's just the. Yeah, I mean, I think the theme for Q1 here is going to be better than expected, as I've been tweeting out. So, because of everything we've been talking about, I mean, consistently we know what rate hikes actually do accomplish. We know what caused the slowdown that we saw in 2022, at the end of 2022, the second half of 2022. It was the tax receipts. It really started off at tax season of 2022 is when the slowdown really started. And we also know how that reverses. More government spending creates new financial assets for the private sector, and then higher rates pushes the term structure of prices higher, and also then gives the new income necessary to support that higher price structure. So we're seeing that. I mean, now this is the thing too. I mean, this is just more my hunch. I don't have data to prove this, but my hunch is that we're actually going to start to see inflation tick up in the summertime. I mean, I think that would be. I think from now until the summertime, we'll probably see inflation hold steady, but or maybe even push a little lower. But I bet come summertime, the real effects of the rate hikes will start to kick in, and we'll see. And inflation is measured by CPI, of course. Depends on what your definition.
That could be marginal. It could be like a slowing of the rate of decline of inflation. It could be in the accelerations that you see. You see that. I mean, hard to say, but that sounds reasonable to me. Interesting to see.
And then I still think I have the one idea too is really, and this will be the biggie, is when the OPEC and the Saudis decide that they finally want their cut of a booming economy, and I think it's only a matter of time before they're like, wait a second, you guys said inflation's going to kill the economy. No, your guys' economy is screaming, we're not going to let oil sit at whatever $65, $70 a barrel anymore. You guys could easily support $150 a barrel. And I mean, obviously we know from 2008, 2013, 14, 15, and so on that is that's achievable if that's what they want. So that could be a summer. That could be what happens in the summer. Anyway. People continue to roll in.
Interesting.
If you are real quick, if you are rolling in, make sure you say hi. Say hi in the chat as well. Let us know that you
That's on the chat.
here.
We
And
got the old like ceiling of 10. We didn't raise it from last week.
yeah,
Still stuck at 10, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So once you push us above 10 likes, we're going to have to do something drastic, like answer your questions in the chat or something like that.
And if you got questions too, drop them as well. But yeah, go ahead, Bijou.
I was interested in your take on the tax receipts and that.
Oh yeah, the tweet.
Whenever the tax receipts roll in, they definitely have an effect. And just reminded me. I'll just go on a little quick diversion here from last week. Jesus in the chat. I didn't see him come in today, so that's a bit of a shame. So Jesus, if you're there, I just wanted to get to your question. We're talking maybe taxes a little bit last week. Oh yeah, I was talking Japan and how they use a sales tax often to try and cut back the government deficit, and it always raises the deficit. It's always a cost on the economy, and the government's having to, spend a little bit more through mostly, I guess, the automatic stabilizers. They can't help it but raise the deficit whenever they raise the sales tax, with a bit of a lag. And so the question was that, should we move income taxes, which are regressive, onto a sales tax? And I can tell you from the Japanese experience, New Zealand, Australia, UK, whenever you increase the sales tax, it's not a good thing either. So I don't think any MMT would recommend that either. Especially you want to almost have a negative sales tax on fruit and veggies and things like that. I mean, you want those are the kind of markets that you want to be a bit neoclassical, and you want those markets to clear. And you want people having healthy food and so on. And so I think, would you agree with me, Douglas, that the sales tax is not a bad tool to use? Could be very effective if you put it on goods that are produced using either polluting industries or useless goods or luxury goods that are using resources that could be better used elsewhere.
Yeah,
and that's the area where you want some sort of sales tax on luxury goods. It's always the purpose of the tax. What's the purpose?
Yep. Yeah.
Fair enough.
I mean, I think it would be. Yeah. I think it would be a channel. It'd be two ways. I mean, if the politicians understood what the tools that they have available to them actually do, then I think they would understand they really have two ways of affecting policy and affecting. We'll call it like a kind of consumer behavior, but consumer behavior might not be the right thing. But I mean, essentially, what you're saying is, one, you could just outright ban smoking, or you could tax the hell out of it, right?
Right.
And if those are both options, you could outright ban various forms of production that are over polluting, or you just tax it to the point where it just becomes, where you don't want to be, you don't want to be too big government, but you also know there's a real social cost for whatever's happening. So,
well, there's another way of being big government, which economists probably might not think about, which is with with smoking tobacco, like you say, there was actually quite a decent educational drive. That's a way government can usefully spend, is running advertising and not advertising, education campaigns and so forth.
Yeah.
So this goes back to Roa Nora in the chat. How the whole, all the sort of screaming and hysterics and the Fed, being prepared to do what it takes to fight inflation and all that, is it sells in the press that gets people riled up and get the psychology rolling of we're going to beat this inflation, and ignoring the fact that when you've got supply constraints, inflation is the correct thing to have happen, and you fight it in a proper way by trying to increase supply and healing workers who are sick and getting them back into employment and so forth. You fight it that way. So the thing about it sells is, I would always come back and say, but what do you believe in? Do you believe in ignorance, or do you believe in an informed electorate and informed leadership, and that's sort of really got to be where things have to go in the future. I reckon if we're not doing an education job, we can do recommend all sorts of macroeconomic policies and that. But if the education isn't there, the public doesn't support it.
Yeah.
And you need that sort of broad support. Yeah, green fascism. Yeah.
I did want to
also that.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was
just the summer consumption.
I was going to jump to that one. Yeah.
When does that jump up? Because that could also.
That was my So I think the question was regarding, will the gouging start taking place in summer? I do think, because people in the northern hemisphere want to drive during the summer. I guess the summer's the summer, no matter what hemisphere you're in. But for us, the summer months that we would call the summer months, would be I think that's when OPEC and the Saudis know that they can get away with the gouging. Obviously everyone could just stay home during the winter time, but everyone wants to travel during the summertime, and especially the US. And if the quid pro quo that was set up to keep oil prices relatively low was in fact in place, then it would make a lot of sense that you have a hot economy, you have people ready to go drive on their summer vacations, and everyone's going to say, nope, I'm going to take my cut of this. It's not my job to keep the economy running. It's your job. So that sort of thing. So that's why I think the summer. Go ahead.
I've had a big dose of it's not my responsibility. It's not up to me. I'll take mine, and leave everyone else. Lack of solidarity in society. I've had a big dose of that this week, actually. Been a bit of a rough week for me. My daughter just started teaching.
Okay.
First job, and I tell you, this is why I'm a little bit obsessed about education. Well, I've actually always been obsessed about education, which is why I like working on that side of MMT as well as helping Douglas out. Because it's like, go to schools and like the kids these days, I don't know. I feel like in that one of those old Yorkshiremen in the old classic Monty Python sketch. It's like, back in our day, kids knew what they were doing. They wouldn't be doing stressing the teacher out and all this.
Yeah.
So these kids are sort of primary school, and they're just wild, and they just want to get away with everything, and the teacher's not allowed to sort of touch them. You got to be very careful.
Yeah.
And so my daughter's having a really hard time, and I just said, "Well, dear, you got to put your foot down. You got to bring the hammer down hard on them initially." And the thing is, though, so she did this yesterday. This is like her third day.
Yeah.
And it worked.
Okay.
It worked.
Okay.
Actually. Yeah. So they sort of and so we had a little discussion about that when she got home, and I'm like, yeah, but these are little kids, right? So it's not going to work just once. You're going to have to do this repeatedly. Because they don't know. And the thing is, so here's the story. So in order to try and be a better lecturer, I tried to. Well, I got an education diploma as well. I wanted to see if I could teach in schools. And man, it was tough. It was so hard. It's one of the hardest jobs you've got, right? And the thing is, though, one of the lecturers said to me, but you got to make it fun, because this is part of a bigger conversation. But the basic idea was that, how do children learn? Think about how children learn. They learn by doing things, having fun activities, really getting engaged. And, this lecturer said to me, do you think adults suddenly stop learning that way?
Yeah.
No, adults enjoy that as well. And also the same thing with the kids, like forgetting the previous day that they were supposed to behave, because it helps everyone in the classroom when everyone's a little bit well behaved. It helps everyone's learning proceed. Well, think about it. Adults don't fundamentally change that much either. They're still got these hang-ups and old beliefs and attachments to, what we're talking about right today, monetarism, and the old myths about debts and deficits, and that. It's like it takes a lot to jiggle people and release them from that hold that the dogma has on them. And so it's like a constant education project. You can't just sort of put up one tweet and be done with it. This is like a war that we're fighting. A war against ignorance. And so it's like day in, day out, you turn up, and we're going to be in this war for a long time, I think, because adults fundamentally still like to learn by having fun. They don't like to be told off, but you also have to believe that a better informed electorate, better education should in the long run work, even though it takes a while to get there, because they're always lapsing backwards. I was talking about this with Douglas earlier. The leftists and the commentators on the left that go on Democracy Now, they'll just say the same things that you get on CNBC and Fox.
Yeah,
that the debt's a big problem. We've got to pay it off. So this is why this is the other side of MMT that I try to work with as well.
I like that. I like that as a bit of a launching point, jumping off point to actually one of the questions that Nick just asked, and then also following back to the big tweet that I had earlier this week that laid out some of the findings we had on last live stream, just about education, having fun. One, I hope we're having fun here. I hope this is a place of fun and education. When I first started the live stream, when I first started really allowing my personality to come out, I was really, I am. Behind closed doors, I'm far more of a degenerate than I'll ever let on during the during the live stream.
What do you mean?
And
no, Douglas is a straight up guy. I can tell you. I can testify. You want me to come in court? Puts on a Twitter face every day.
Yeah. It's all for the act, but I do hope we can have a little fun. I'll certainly go the monetarist, but when it's all said and done, hopefully it's to keep things engaging and actually that's where I'll start. Nick, we will get to that absolutely. You'll get a sneak preview of my next tweet tonight in terms of what's going on with the tax stuff and why the yield curve inversion is different this time. We'll get to that in a minute. I want to talk about the tweet that I put up, the big thread that I put up earlier this week first.
Yeah.
And let me
this fun stuff it serves a purpose, right? Because there's nothing better than being right about these things later on. But if you don't put in your, if you don't make the calls early, later on, it's just like after the fact. It's like, oh yeah, well, what I thought was after. But you got to have these receipts, right? So we talk about the conditions in the economy today, and we'll see. I think later on, with Douglas might show you how COVID really messed things up, and it's made it very different, but in a very interesting way.
Yeah.
That all the stuff is stuff that we can say later on how we got it right.
Yep.
Really, hopefully get more people learning things the right way. So what is this?
This is what we went over last year or last week. If you remember last year when I started talking
last year.
Same thing. Yeah. We did hit our 10 likes. This is what you get to see for 10 likes. For 15 likes, we'll jump to the other stuff we have. Okay. Big qualifier here too. And I know the people who are dogging me probably aren't watching this, but Twitter is not an academic journal, just for the record. Listen,
I feel bad I have to tweet that out again.
Jeez, oh Pete's, man.
Peer-reviewed Twitter.
I actually used ChatGPT to help me with part of that tweet because I wanted to be very clear, at least in one line, that I was using the proper jargon for the stats PhDs. And I said, and I highlighted this, I said that Granger cause, the purpose that Granger cause serves is to find out if your X variable, what the forecastability the X variable has on the Y variable. That's what I said in the tweet. This is for forecasting. How strong is it as a forecaster? That's the big word the Granger cause people use. I put that in the tweet, and I still got multiple people telling me, well, this isn't, Yeah, look, if I wrote an academic journal in Twitter, no one's going to read it. I'm not going to reach anybody, right? I mean,
but here, look, you got dozens of people reading this one.
Yeah. Almost 20,000 people reading, or at least
so naive.
Yeah.
Thinking that they're going to read every word and absorb.
Yeah.
context
it's
of it?
it's some squiggly lines on Twitter. I mean, the whole point is there's another narrative that can be told with the data than the narrative that we've all gotten, right? I mean, that is the big point. So I do need to make some corrections though from that, and there's some other things that I want to talk about. So when I was doing all my data, because I'm not as careful as Bijou, and I'm not as patient stepping through the steps, I just started firing away, and I doubled up one of my functions to create the 10-year yield and the Fed funds rate of change relative to just the actual, what we would call the acceleration relative to just the percent change of the rate of change. So it really turned out the Fed funds and the 10-year yield gave us the most amount of mutual information, the highest mutual information, and then government spending and oil inventory were next up, with M2 and deposits being after that. Above all else, the big thing to take away from the mutual information is relative to my average local temperature, they give us a tremendous amount of information from an information theory standpoint about what is happening with CPI inflation. And so the whole reason we do these steps in the first place is, we build various learning models. And if you're going to put, and this is no different. I mean, the way learning models learn isn't too far off. I mean, it's obviously a lot off, pretty far away from the way humans learn. But if you teach someone the wrong assumptions about the data they're looking at, they too will take that in and run with it, and they'll do exactly whatever it is you told them. I mean, we see this play out with the wrong way people understand what rate hikes do, right? We see that in action. Learning model is going to do the same thing. If you give the learning model data to learn on and you tell it this is the right answer, it's going to learn that and it'll repeat it back to you and it'll score perfect on the test. But you told it the wrong direction, right? You pointed the arrow in the wrong direction. So we do these tests to make sure that the way that we are viewing the data is statistically the correct way that we're going to then feed it in to the deep learning models. So when we get a response back from the deep learning models, we know what that response actually means. So that's the point of this. In the meantime, it's just fun to share on Twitter and package it in a way that's actually meaningful. So there's that big caveat. I'm going to digress on my don't come at me, bro, with your, well, this isn't how we use it in the academics, and you didn't properly reference whatever.
And also with all these statistical tests and metrics, you got Fed funds and 10-year yield there. Okay, there's a further question. Is that causing the inflation, or is it just setting expectations for a term structure of prices?
Yep.
And is that not just a simple policy choice?
Yeah.
Whereas oil inventory, is that government policy? Government policy to get oil?
No. I mean, that wouldn't be. No.
I mean, that's a completely different thing. So, so when I look at that, I see a whole bunch of different stories there. And it's like critical to understand what's cause and what's just simple policy choice.
Yep. So there's that. I mean, all of these are obviously part of the larger inflation equation. And all probably good kind of candidate variables for what is causing inflation, what's not causing inflation. But I did want to throw that out there. I also wanted to put the big qualifier too. And I'm not trying to be disingenuous in anything I tweet, in any of these tweets I put out there. I mean, I want them to be part of popular consumption and thought provoking, but also just realize it's Twitter. I mean, it's Twitter. I got to get engagement. The only people that would read academic journals are academics, and MMT's not making foothold quite yet in that area. So we need like you're saying, we need the electorate to come in and say, no, we want this. We understand what this is, and we want it. Let me see. I don't think I really have anything else to add. All the Granger cause stuff is still there, still the same. That all panned out. I think the only other thing that really we need to do further is one of the things you suggested, which is do a time series analysis on each lag in mutual information, right? So over a year cycle, is there anything, if this was all, none of this was lagged, right? This was all just the same time frame. But if we did Fed funds lagged 3 months, would that still yield the same amount of mutual information? That would be one other thing. And then I'm trying to think. And then, and then just for the record too, again, if anyone's watching this, I did run Granger cause for all 12 lags, so an entire year's worth of lag. So I mean, I looked everything up, and none of that. Obviously, I reported what I found, and was fair with the data. So I mean, some of this is obviously always a little bit up to interpretation.
A little bit.
And then the final thing is, I did get asked a couple times. We're working on quite a few things all at once, but this data will be published. Or this workbook I'm going to be putting up. It's pretty much as clean as it's going to get. So I will put this up on the Patreon feed for all tiers, and then eventually we will start a public, free GitHub once we determine, if we're going to put it out like that, we want to make sure it's right and fully complete. But we will put kind of this core research out there. But in the meantime, as we kind of come across this stuff, it will be on the Patreon for even the entry tier as well. So if it's something you want, and it's not that I want to put a paywall, but if I'm going to put it on a public GitHub, I want it. What I'm trying to say is, when Bijou finally has time to clean it up and make sure it's all right and double check my work, then we'll make a public GitHub for some of this stuff. Obviously, the investment stuff, we'll talk about that in a little while. The investment stuff, I mean, that's providing monetary value to those who consume it. That's a slightly different thing. But this is true kind of academic work, and we'd love to share it for that purpose.
The stuff that's not going to cause any harm if you get it out there. It's also going to be interesting because thinking a year or 2 years ahead, right? Don't the neoclassicals and monetarists say, well, without lowering the interest rates to get inflation to target it, we just need a couple. We need more time.
More time.
Japanese would say.
Yeah.
And so there's a potential that this will happen in a lot of other economies as well. So you can imagine a scenario thinking a few years ahead now, right? A few years ahead, that there's a bit of a stagnation, GDP drops, inflation drops, and they keep lowering the rate because they think it's going to cause inflation. And so when that dynamic happens again, we're going to be able to do some more tests. The point is that it's since the rates are high now, we're going to see a drop eventually later.
Yeah.
So it'll be yet another opportunity to do a lot of this testing, some of the MMT assumptions and so forth. Really interesting times ahead. But
it has, I mean, we've
wait a bit for that.
Yeah, we've been in an awesome kind of petri dish or a bit of a laboratory for testing. I mean, it sucked for a lot of people, but that's the sad part. But we've been able to run some tests.
It also fed a lot of naive anti-MMT, like, MMT's wrong. So the story isn't really fully told of how actually it all tracked exactly what MMT would sort of predict. Supply constraints, lockdowns, bottlenecks, make people unemployed suddenly. All of that sort of stuff is just straight out of like an MMT playbook, if you like.
Yeah,
not exactly what you'd want. So,
but if you did it,
And so all that stuff is again so much educational work to do. And so, it's going to be never ending, it seems.
God, yeah. I mean, the ripple effects of the policy decisions over the last 3 years, and then the decisions you have to take because of the decisions you made.
Right. Yeah.
As I'm looking at this too, I guess I do want to add a few more things on this. One, I want to be very clear too, and again, the big thing is I tweeted out is that government spending doesn't cause inflation. What I mean by that is that over the 30, 40 years of data that we can test it on, there's no causal link with government spending and inflation, right? And the way to kind of think about this is, if you're familiar with like principal component analysis, when you want to take hundreds of factors and compress them into just 3 factors that tell that tell the majority of the story, that explain the variance in price that you see, we could do the same thing with the factors in front of us, right? I mean, there might be a million things that would be potential inputs to what's actually causing inflation. And really what I'm trying to say is, relative to everything, obviously government spending could cause inflation, but over the time that we've can measure this, and certainly over the big expansion in government spending that we've seen since the 1980s until today, it doesn't seem to be the primary driver. If anything, it's usually inflation driving government spending because of kind of complex dynamics that are happening in the system, counter-cyclical dynamics that play out. But the point is that government spending is just not what we would call the cause of inflation as it's generally understood, and that it's also on a bit of a relative scale as well. So I do, right. and then the final thing is, the government could cause inflation with government spending.
Could if they wanted to. And I would pay a higher price.
Yeah, just pay a price. Yeah, and I wouldn't even push back that some of the inflation we've seen is a product of the stimmy checks. I don't have an issue with that, right? But to say that government spending causes inflation is inaccurate. Like it's very inaccurate and disingenuous to what the data is actually saying, right? Government spending, if it is, go ahead. Yeah.
No, you're right. The stimulus checks were essentially, if you think about it, paying a higher price for, all the, it's hard to say what price, what they were paying for. They were paying for people not to, commit suicide or whatever, or jump off buildings because of the lockdowns and so forth. They were paying for the effects of COVID. But in a sense, you could think of it. Imagine there was no COVID pandemic, and that all it would have amounted to would be the government paying a higher unemployment benefit for a while, and I guess it's kind of like paying a higher pension payment and paying civil servants about the same. Was it 80% in some country? In New Zealand, it was 80% wage subsidies, but it was still paying for people to do less work because you were locking them down. You were saying, go home, do work from home and all that. That there was. It was just paying a sort of roughly the same wages for less work. Mm-hmm. So that is paying a higher price for a short time when the stimulus was in effect, and a lot of it was paying off debt and so forth before the rent freezes were unfrozen and all that sort of thing. And so I agree with you that was a unique era, and it again. It's nothing. There's nothing that MMT would disagree with about those effects.
Yeah. I agree, Ty. I mean, they were a necessary thing. Necessary. And the other thing too is, if that money's not there when the economy comes back online, right? If the demand pressure isn't there, then that too could have if the manufacturing sector doesn't feel the demand to go ahead and get the engines back up on output, right? If there's not money there, then the system never restarts either, right? I mean, part of it was the spending binge that we saw in late 2020 through 2021 was, people overhired. I mean, we saw that. That's part of, the reason we're getting what they're calling the white collar, the white collar recession, right? I mean, people they overhired, and you certainly saw that production impulse that occurred post pandemic, and that was necessary. I know for whatever reason there are far righters that just love the idea of a collapsing economy, but I would prefer to not live through that. I don't know.
Doesn't sound like a good idea to me. Yeah.
It's kind of wild because they'd say, government spending is bad. We need to stop it so we can finally see this whole thing crash. And it's like, wait a second. No, let's just keep having, the best life that we can at this point.
I'm not sure what they want to crash there. There are also people on the other side of the spectrum wanting the US dollar to crash.
So
they can, I don't know what their plan is after that, but
we talked about that last week. When it does crash, it's going to crash up.
Yeah, you're right.
It's going to crash up, and it's going to do a lot of damage. I don't. Yeah, we're going to just thought on the dot real quick. I don't disagree that the U.S. still has a very imperialistic impulse to it. that I don't think it fully even understands, right? But that it has, right? I mean, I think it just thinks it's the the good guy in all places, everywhere. The U.S. did not tax the stimmy checks. No, that was some free cash, baby. My kids have a 16-foot water slide out in the backyard because of our stimmy checks. So that's how free. That's how free. I mean, that's how stupid. Look, I don't disagree. The stimmy thing could have been done a little bit better, but you just. I mean, no one knew. No one knew in April of 2020. No one understood what was about to happen and what the next 18 months was going to look like. And they did the best they can. And just the other thing too, for the record. The Trump administration started it, right? I mean, it wasn't. Biden was not in office at that point. At least from the politics side, I know he doubled down on the stimmy, but anyway, I'll digress from the direct politics as I derail my own train of thought.
No, that's fine. No, I think you mentioned that a while back that. I think it was in one of your weekly updates on YouTube that the government policy, it's a big thing. It's a big driver, and you can't ignore it. So, at some point, financial types have to consider government policy. You can't just look at charts and do technical analysis all the time. I mean, that gets you so far as long as you are picking up on the correct signals. But if you really want to understand it and not just do technical analysis, you've got to come to grips with government policy decisions and so forth. And like I said, look at the fiendishly decrypted C-SPAN channels.
Oh my god! Oh yeah. The financial media, it's part of me like wants to get into some of these debates, but it's just we're talking different languages at this point, and it's better off that we just live in our own little bubble for now and try and grab a few. God, this is gonna sound. I know the monetarists are gonna love this, but try and grab a few converts from now and then, and build the base. I
know. It's like when does this? Is there a tipping point for this stuff?
For finally full conversion,
or something, or it's like a critical mass or that sort of theory.
Yeah. Well, what was I was watching that Quanta the magazine, their YouTube channel had on video just recently published about some research happening with phase transition. What's it called? What's it called?
Critical phenomena.
The critical point.
Self-organized criticality.
Yeah.
I left a comment on that channel, actually.
Yeah.
Snap.
Yeah.
So you want to explain what you got out of that? Because I got something out of that as well.
Okay. I have a PhD.
This stuff I know well.
I've got a PhD physicist on the live stream, and we're gonna let Doug try and describe what he actually got out of.
No, I'm interested. I'm genuinely interested in what you got out of that. Because yes, go ahead. Because it is.
Hold on.
There is a critical phenomenon here.
Right? We're talking about the same video that was just posted a week ago, right? Quanta.
Right. Let me drop it in the chat. You keep talking.
You're posting it. Okay. I was going to look it up on the YouTube channel, and I'm seeing my stupid Ben Stiller looking at the MMT Center for Monterists who can't do good economics thumbnail. God, that looks good on YouTube. What was I going to say? Okay, so this is the one that was posted earlier this week. Yeah, post in the chat. The idea was that there's this criticality. Is it criticality? Self-organized criticality that operates in the brain. The brain needs to be at in this state to allow the stimuli to come in and make the necessary adjustments that need to happen to allow it to respond. I think one of the things that I took from that, as it would apply to economics, maybe even social behavioral economics, would be one that the market seems to be in that state, right? I mean, it seems to be in a state of kind of. It seems to
bordering on chaos and order.
Yeah,
order. Too much order is dead. Is it sort of like just Soviet sort of just style control, too much control, and chaos is where it's just completely wild and anarchic, free market, and anarcho-capitalism. So somewhere in between is where it seems to have self-organized.
And it seems like there's this cycle that happens even within the market where you get this, we would see this as a compression of volatility, the lull before the storm that happens. And then all of a sudden there's just this phase transition that occurs where it's the market that is now understanding this new information that is in front of it, this new stimulus, not stimmy check, but the stimuli that's hitting it. And then you see these massive moves happen. And I think, and I'm bringing it back to kind of the social behavior of this, I mean, I think at some point you'll have a movement with MMT, in part because it's just the right way, where eventually there will be this critical point where it just explodes in to a certain extent we're seeing it. I mean, it's fewer and fewer people are willing to say, I mean, although obviously politicians on the right will say it because that's, what their base is going to respond to, but fewer and fewer people are willing to say that the government is ran like a household, right? I mean, that is, people know that they will get called out on that and be forced to show the receipts, so to speak, on that sort of argument. Yeah. So they're a little bit slower to offer it. So I think we're getting close, but I do think eventually that phenomena could play out where there just is full adoption of kind of an MMT theory. Oh yeah, your thoughts.
That is a kind of I still only think it's a bit of a metaphor, but I think there's something to it. Like there is a phase transition. So phase transition is when you have some sort of variables or parameters like pressure and temperature in a gas that change, and then suddenly it goes from liquid to solid. But you need a nucleation point to seed the thing. We've already got that, right? We've got the 7 deadly innocent frauds of economic policy, got deficit myth, got Randy Ray's very, very fine grained analysis of the monetary system, and it can all be checked out. So whenever anyone wants to really educate themselves or look into it, they can always check it out. And so work that Douglas is doing here is doing some extra checks on things as well. So there's already this nucleus, the seed that can start the critical or the phase transition. But what I was thinking about the Quantum magazine complexity story and all that. So, I mean, it was really interesting. It was actually interesting just for that brain science and that. But I was thinking exactly like Douglas as it turned out. I was thinking, this sort of has MMT implications as well. The thing is, though, if you look at all their systems, like sand grains falling in a single spot, right? They build up, and then when it reaches a certain, when the sand pile that you're building up from a single trickle of sand, so falling at a single point, it builds up like a cone, and then eventually the slope of the cone, the sides of the cone reach a critical angle, and then suddenly you get these cascades of avalanches of sand all the way down on all scales. So lots of small cascades, and then a few really big cascades, like a power law distribution. So that's the same as the distribution of wealth in an economy, same as the distribution of earthquakes. Whenever you have like a rich get richer and a poor get poorer kind of phenomenon, that's what happens. And it's a very sort of natural thing to occur if you don't sort of do something about it. So what you could do about it is in the sand pile to stop the avalanches, you just move the thing around. So you distribute the sand, evenly. That would be called government policy or something.
Oh yeah. There's there's a mover, if you will. Yeah.
This is move the sand grains around so you don't get these big avalanches or big pileups.
Yeah.
And in the brain, it was interesting because they thought they had this hypothesis that neurons were sort of on this knife edge of being inactive or being too active.
Yep.
Like epileptic or sort of brain dead. But it turns out that they weren't quite that way. The brain was far more interesting than that, and it wasn't just self-organized criticality. It was far more nuanced and far more control mechanisms than that. But then, what were some of the other examples? They did talk about the economy and markets, and a few others. You can check it out.
I put the link in I put the link in the chat.
Yeah.
It's a worthwhile watch. It's a worthwhile watch.
but the thing is, what's in common with all of those self-organized critical systems is that if it go to check out the video, see if I'm right or not. But here's my take: is that every one of those self-organized systems that reach sort of criticality, flocking of birds is another one, right? Bird flocking and flocking behavior. All of those, you've got a system with many agents, and they're all very similar. So all of the little agents acting are like clones of each other. And that explains why you get a lot of self-organized criticality in all of these systems. They're all like almost uniform, like homogeneous types of agents.
Interesting.
And the icing, the icing model is another one where you've got magnetic spins that can flip up and down.
Yeah, that was really cool. Yeah.
They're all the same thing, and they're going to behave spookily as if they're the same. And it's like, to me, I'm thinking, what? They are the same.
Yeah.
You see, so this is what some of the nerds don't quite understand. Whereas neurons in the brain are not all the same in terms of their topology. Their connection is highly structured. And that's what learning is. That's what development of an infant brain and brain morphology. And then later on, when you go to school or you learn from your parents, you'll learn languages. It's far more structured, and your brain neurons at a gross level, they all look kind of the same, but at a detailed level, they're not. There's far more structure in that than a sand grain. Like a sand grain is a sand grain. They're all the same.
Yeah.
So you get this self-organized criticality.
Yeah.
Things are the same. And so in an economic system, when everyone is thinking the same, you're going to get these critical phenomena where things build up, whether it's private debt or euphoria in the market, build up, and then it's going to have these cascading sort of sell-offs or whatever effect that you can measure. I think some people at the Santa Fe Institute have had a look at this for economics and financial markets, and they do see some of these power law cascades and things like that. Whereas what you're looking at here with Douglas's charts is not that. These are far more interesting, regular things that happen in the real economy, and that's because all of these factors: government spending, the oil inventories, the Fed funds rate, the interest rates, and so on. These are all very different quantities, and so you can't get a self-organized criticality with any of these things because they're not all the same. They're not all the same.
That's interesting.
Type of agent.
Yeah.
So that's a nuance that I think people should be aware of.
Yeah.
And otherwise it's a really, really good episode. I encourage people.
That's okay. That was helpful actually, because I think one of the things you see often, especially when you look at price play out over time, that's a fancy way of saying when you look at charts. One of the things you just look at charts is you do see patterns play out that are very similar over time, right? I mean, these patterns will repeat themselves. They're kind of these fractal patterns. I think maybe one way you could interpolate what you're, not interpolate, interpret what it is that you're saying is that you might see patterns play out, but these patterns are maybe just kind of natural phenomenon that happen no matter what. But because each agent is different and has various qualities to them that make them very, although humans are all humans, the factors of the decisions they're making are going to be so broad compared to a bird just being the copy of the bird next to it, making the exact same decision with the exact same 3 or 4 inputs that it would use to make the decision which way to go next. That you should be skeptical of what you can learn based on any observed output. Kind of like why it's so difficult to understand what the heck's happening to the brain, but yet other systems that seem maybe even more complex than the brain are very easy to describe in just a few kind of mathematical expressions. The brain's different because each individual part is very complex. And then you extrapolate that up even further into an economy, and everyone is so different. Yeah, there's phenomenon that can be replicated or that can be used to describe what's happening, but you're not going to have the predictability necessarily that you would in an economic system that you would with something like a flock of birds or something like that.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, in certain markets, you're going to have self-organized criticality and like what you'd call crowd behavior, crowd psychology,
Yeah.
because those markets, everyone is kind of acting like the same kind of entity. They've all got the same understanding. They've all got the same information, and it's like I'm going to try and agree with the chat, guys. Pretty much whenever I can, because I don't want to disagree. But so I'm always going to look at the chat and think, yeah, you're right about that. But unless you're completely mad and like Rob comes on and I have to get into an argument, but I'm just looking at Nick Jackson there saying, yeah, you see, you need to convince the big guns. Not quite exactly. I think I know what you mean, right? So there are powerful forces in an economic system, especially at the macro level, where now we cannot really think of it as just a flock of birds obeying some sort of natural laws and having this amazing regular motion and cascades and so forth and critical phenomena. Like I said, that only happens when everyone's sort of equal and the same and everyone's sort of homogeneous. And I think you're right, Nick. By the way, welcome to the chat and so forth. So yeah, there's definitely big actors in play. We call them oligarchs, we call them governments and so forth. And they can completely destroy any flocking behavior of birds, like getting some sort of Tory fox hunter with a shotgun and smacking his gun in amongst the flock of birds. It's going to just
scatter everything. Yeah. There was usually hour 2 and 3 we go off the rails, but that was good.
Keeping it to the theme.
Yeah, that was a good slight diversion from.
Well, still, what I could mention is the certain non-equilibrium phenomenon. Just to let people know, just a little bit of gossip news is Douglas, MMT macro trader, gets followed by Stephanie Kelton and endorsed by Warren Mosler. Big time.
Well, the torch has been handed, I think, is the phrase.
Let me quote this. This is a formal ceremony here. After Warren Mosler, after 40 years in the desert, it's nice to see the next generation carrying the torch. ! Winky smiley face. There you go. So it's a tectonic shift happening here in the MMT tectonic plates, right?
It's because we're having fun more than anything else, right? Yeah, it's because we're having fun. Everyone else who's been doing this is not having fun.
I checked the diacritical Richter scale, registered -1. -1, as expected. They got it backwards.
Yeah.
So there you go. Just some news there, just some gossip. It's good stuff. It's good to see Douglas getting some likes from the big names. Is that that's going to help. That's going to help. I hope.
Well, God, I got it. If you've never watched it, you got to watch Mosler's. I rewatched it 10 years ago this summer is when I stumbled across MMT. I know I've mentioned this debate before, but Warren Mosler's debate with Bob Murphy 10 years ago this June.
Oh, yeah.
I rewatched it. I was doing a little prep for. I'll be on someone else's podcast this Friday. I'll announce it on Twitter. We can talk about it next week. But Applied MMT podcast and one of the things I wanted to prep for, just have a few things ready, is how did I stumble across MMT? So I'm like, I haven't listened to this in a long time, this debate. Mm-hmm. So I re-listened to it. I just got to tell you, Warren Mosler has been on the ball for a very long time, and it's really amazing to me just how ahead of everyone he truly was. And if you haven't listened to that debate, it is worth listening to. One, I don't know. I mean, I guess that's why Bob Murphy went and grew a beard. Because I don't know how you'd show your face after that beatdown that he got, man.
I didn't know.
Yeah, he's got a big beard now.
Okay.
Nice Ronora. Yeah, dude. That was. I remember sitting there. Yeah, I've told this story before, but I was at the gym. I was about ready to go lift weights. I'm more of a weightlifter than I am. Cardio guy. Yeah. But I was warming up and I was listening to this debate. I mean, I was a big Austrian at the time, and I was trying to build these macro models. Yeah. Yeah, and I might have had a buddy tell me about MMT at that point. I do remember too, actually, Ty, if you're still here, you'll like this, and I'll tell Steve Keen this one time. But somebody handed off to me, a buddy of mine who's a kind of a lefty Marxist type, handed off to me some of Steve Keen's work. I couldn't make heads or tails out of what he was actually saying in it at the time. I just didn't have the foundation, and I'm like, whatever. I'll toss this. But I think I had someone tell me about MMT, so I decide to. Mike at the end of it, man. Mike was hilarious. I forgot about that part. He's Bob Murphy. I think you're super disrespectful to Mr. Mosler over there. Yeah, I can just imagine what Murphy was thinking.
That was the original trader finance bro.
Yeah,
that moment.
Yeah. I hope you liked my Mike Norman impression. Yeah. Every once in a while, my wife has heard me listening to Mike Norman from time to time, and every once in a while she'll go, "Hey, everybody!" So if you've watched him, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Mike must have done as much good education for MMT as some of the best of them.
Yeah. I give him a lot of credit. He was way ahead of this. He's one of the first people I found after I found Warren to finally start to connect the dots with the with the financial world, and I mean, he's the one that pointed me towards the daily treasury statement. He's the one that pointed me towards all the Fed data that mattered. So he's been a great resource as well. But anyway, going back to the story.
In the gym.
Yeah, I was at the gym, and I had a lifting buddy, and he's like, "Are you ready? Ready to lift?" Spot me. I'm like, "No, dude." I put so it's a 2-hour long debate. All right, and hour of the morning at the gym. I put that thing on 2x. I spent 1 hour straight right on the elliptical doing absolutely nothing. Went into work that day. I probably got nothing done as I'm like, what the hell just hit me? And I mean, at every turn, it was Bob Murphy saying, "Well, you're technically right, but what if?" and Moser's like, "Yeah, I mean, what if? It's not. I mean, anything could be what if. You can't disprove a negative in that sense." And I mean, that's kind of what he kept throwing out. The story could have been different. Well, yeah, I mean, it could have been, but that's not what we have. But that's how I started with MMT, and as they say, the rest is history. So. Let's see. We had a lot of stuff firing away in the chat too. That's catching my eye. He went full queen. I
don't know if Warren is a libertarian. I think all these labels get confused quite a bit. It's like what I get from Warren Mosler is that he's interested in how things work more than anything.
More than anything else.
And just fairly conventional views on justice and equality and fairness. So when you say free market, you gotta really qualify that and not use it, just bandy that term around like everyone wants a free market. You want a fair market, and that's the way I always understood Warren. He always comes across to me as someone who's interested in the truth about things, how things work. And if things are a bit unjust or you don't have a level playing field, what can you do to make it a better level playing field so that everyone gains in proportion to how much you put into the system, and you don't cause mass unemployment and starvation when you don't need to. So it's also didn't I mention to you the other day, Douglas, there was those couple of chaps that were some sort of strange
volitional science network. Yeah.
It just cracks me up because people talk about their scientific and their rational. It's a lot like scientific, historical materialism and scientific Marxism and all that. It's like it's very sort of new age in a way. It's like the opposite of a lot of new age QAnon type stuff, but it's also very similar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't see much science in it at all. Whereas with Moser, he always is very well grounded, and I just like listening to Warren because he does have a good grounding And to me, that's a more of a scientific approach, understanding the system, but also recognizing that there's a lot of power imbalance as well, and so that side of things really does matter. That's why he's been fighting this crusade out in the desert for 40 years, because as a guy who came up with MMT counter paradigm, against the whole paradigm, you're gonna be fighting an uphill battle for a long time.
But before we go on the libertarian thing, I consider myself a pragmatist, with teeth, I guess we'll call it. I do want to go though, because I do want to go on about the Jesus. I do want to go on about the libertarian small government thing, because this kind of bothers me just a little bit. That no one wants authority in their life telling them to do something against their will that isn't impacting anyone else. I like that. That is, whether you're a parent to a kid all the way up the spectrum, for the most part is a universal truth, right? We all want to have autonomous control over our lives insofar as we're not affecting other people negatively. And we'd want that for everyone. I think the MMT story, and why I think you can say that to a certain extent you can be an MMTist and be a libertarian, is because MMT actually offers the libertarians what they really want, right? Because they understand the sequence, right? The real injustice is the unemployed because of the tax. That is the real injustice. Right. That is where the injustice actually starts, right? And it's not the government spending more than it has. It's the government that's putting people in a position where they have to work for dollars, and it's only the government, and the government needs to provision itself. True story. Well before the QAnon far right wing stuff started, I was a kid, late 80s, early 90s. We had this guy live across the street from us that was a complete kook when I was growing up. And my parents would say, yeah, he's part of the Michigan militia, So, I mean, the Michigan militia, unfortunately, it turned out that, they did some, one of the guys ended up being part of the Oklahoma City bombing thing, but it was a big thing. This guy lived across the street, and they were just a libertarian. They were a modern, or an old version of the modern day nut jobs that are out there. But back then they were not mainstream, right? They were no nut jobs. Right. But here's the thing: they wanted nothing to do with the government. But even they had to provision themselves, right? They'd hand out these stupid pamphlets. They had to pay for them, right? They had to provision their nonsense. They had an authority structure that they had to put in. You have to do this if you want any sort of society that's going to work together. It has to do this. You have to have, and what's worked out really well? A democratic, self-organizing
libertarians. They find government, they need their own little private government.
Yes, right? Yes, and they will provision themselves.
In a little libertarian commune, when you have your own little private government, and then you expand your commune to a few million people. Yeah. What do you call it then?
Yeah. Just for the record, just to back up too, the Michigan militia was a large organization. The people across the street were not part of any activity, but the Michigan militia got press after Oklahoma City. Yeah. So this was it's the right wing movements that happen.
Can be interesting people.
Yeah.
The guy was a critical system of homogeneous sand grains around here.
Yeah.
Go and say hello to your neighbors. See what views they have. I bet you'll be surprised.
So the bigger point I was trying to make with the libertarian stuff, though, is that that MMT properly gets where the injustice is coming from, and you're not a big government guy. And I get this. If there is one thing that will trigger me on the Twitter stuff, is that I want that, you guys want big government. No, I want as little government as is necessary to get optimal output from the economy. I don't I don't post this on Twitter, but I was close to doing it when someone's like, there's a response about you just want big government, yada yada yada. I homeschool with 4 kids. Okay, my wife is a stay-at-home mom. I'm not a big government guy, but just I want to do my own stuff, but I also understand that the injustice starts when the tax gets put in, and that is what puts people into an unemployment position, and that is what reduces the real output, and that is where the real injustice starts. It's not it's not the government borrowing to spend, it's the government not spending enough.
Yeah. I agree with some of the people in the chat, that okay, small government can do big things and all that. That's definitely true, because when you're a monopolist, unless you can incite enough people with pitchforks to come and overthrow you in a serious way, not like June 6th, not like January 6th.
Yeah.
But I was going to say, yeah. So thing is about big and small government is that I always think you've got to remember what we really want to do is automate a whole lot of industry, and then put people out of that kind of work. And then what are you going to do? What are you going to do with people? Well, there's like infinite amount of work that people can do to help each other out. And the question is, how are you going to do that? Well, it's going to have to be a sort of a government, but it doesn't have to be the big brother government. What it has to be is government by sort of the people, everyone. So when I think of government, I actually think of ultra super big government is the way to go, where everyone, it's like a democracy. It's like a proper democracy.
Yeah.
So in that sense, the central government is small. Central government, they have to run certain institutions, a payment system, whatever you want as a public utility has to be provision and all that sort of thing. And you're still going to use taxes to drive the currency, because why the hell wouldn't you? It just works.
Yeah.
If you understand it well, it can work well. It doesn't cause any unemployment if you understand it. And and then you devolve a lot of government, not in a neoliberal way, like, here, go away for yourself and raise your own funds. It's like, scratch around for donors, do it yourself kind of thing. No. Government can always provision local communities to do whatever they want, as long as it's within the law, as long as it's like a collective community decision. So you don't have to have a centrally planned big state economy. You can have small central government, but massive government. I'm talking super massive.
Yeah, in the sense that
everyone is all of society,
an active agent. Yeah,
very democratic, and you've got lots of like worker cooperatives or whatever you want. You got people in private running private firms to do things that they want, because they don't want to run things in a sort of kind of a anarchic communistic type of way. They want to have a little bit of control over their own life. They want to start a little business or try and have the next big startup or whatever it is. But as long as they're doing it through legal means and it's fair and everything, then you can have like this super massive big government, but it's distributed. That's my old pet theory here. It's like you're probably dreaming about all this, but still.
Yeah,
something that's possible.
The one final thing I'll add is that it actually takes a far more I forget the word the libertarians like the real like Mises and Rothbard libertarians use violence, I think is the word they use, or something like that. I forget exactly how they put it, but but it takes coercive. It takes a very coercive government. You know what requires a very coercive government to have a currency that's not fiat. To have a that was I think it was kind of the part that
piracy is what it's called.
Yeah, I think that was kind of the part that really bugged me, is they were talking about this coercive government that was taking taxes, and there should be this coercion that occurs, and I mean, make whatever argument, but God, you got to coerce quite a lot to have a stable currency, as they would call it, right? They have some backed currency that stays stable. Because I got it all backwards. I mean,
it's a cool thing that they don't understand, it seems to me.
Yeah. Anyway, I'll digress. But if you want to trigger me, tell me that I'm just some big government guy. I guess you're right though. Depending on how you define what big government actually is, I
think definitions matter. I'm pretty big on definitions, getting it sorted out.
Yeah, getting it right.
because someone can say something to me, I can always find ways to agree with people, just about.
Yeah, or disagree.
Definitions. Or disagree if I want to. Yeah, if I want to be a real jerk.
Yeah,
sometimes I do. Yeah. So it's always what do you mean by big government? What do you mean by small government? It's it makes a difference to what you really mean. But anyway, you did provoke a bit of chat here.
Yeah,
do you want to address any of that?
Yeah, I haven't been reading it too. So if there's anything that I missed, or if there were any questions that came up during all of that,
well, Jesus got the point. That got the point about if you want to get rid of government, then how do you actually protect the private property that you say you're interested in
protecting in the first place? Yeah,
what do you do is you form your own little court, and you hire some mercenaries and big guns to make your court bigger than the other guy's court, and then you can protect your private property.
And what we'll call
doesn't it make a lot more sense to have like a central government that sort of everyone's sort of buying into a little bit, just not neoliberal, just actually a government that protects the workers and protects ordinary people. And then you don't have to worry about hiring your own mercenaries and guns to run your own little private government or fiefdom or whatever. So it seems to me that there's a lot of good-hearted anarchists and libertarians in that sort of they're not bad people. It's not that they want bad things to happen. Generally, people want good things to happen. It's just their ideologies are a bit confused. And they certainly don't understand the purpose of a currency.
Yeah. I just had a
use the Girl Scouts as problem solved. Hell yeah.
Yeah, that is pretty good. Let's see.
Yeah, Teddy Bruschi, libertarian. I don't want the state to oppress people. I want to do it myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Let's see. Is there anything else? Yeah. What good is? What's the point of having a national government? It's not big. Yeah. I mean, I think it all goes down to that idea that Bijou was hitting at. What's the definition of a big? And yeah, I think when people say big government, what they actually mean is the few governing the many, as opposed to what you would mean by big government is the many governing the many.
The central bureaucracy doesn't necessarily have to be massively big, but the government, if you're going to have a national system where you've got sort of a collective identity and so forth, and a sane patriotism, it doesn't have to be insane and completely out of whack and like we're better than everyone else, we win more gold medals. If you want to go down that road, check out New Zealand's tally of the gold medals per capita. So just saying. So,
my whole identity is built on the fact that the U.S. has the best.
We got the best.
We got the best athletics. There's never been a team outside of America that's won the Super Bowl. Okay.
Oh my God! The World Series keeps getting won by Americans,
except for '89 or whatever year that was.
We must bow down to your superiority.
That Canadian team, yeah. Although an American soccer team's never won the Premier League.
So anyway, I agree. It doesn't make sense if you got weak, tiny ass government. You got to have big government to protect the working class, and it's a matter of how you've arrange it and function and create it so that you've got more local autonomy that is correctly resourced and funded. It's no good doing the neoliberal devolution and giving local communities autonomy and then just starving them. It just doesn't make any sense.
Let's see. I want to jump back. I haven't seen him in chat.
Back to
Nick. What? I think Nick had a question a long time ago. About the tweet I posted today. So we're going to shift gears a little bit, unless there were questions that still needed to get answered. But we can jump back to the questions.
There were some questions about physics.
Okay.
But that's a derailing. One could. I just want to bookmark it. Could one physics theory unlock the mystery of the brain? Oh, okay. That was a comment. What does it say about science itself? Okay. Okay, I'll have to come back to that. Not quite sure what they mean. Okay, go back to your
Yeah, we're gonna transition a little bit to the tweet that I put out today. I promised that I'd talk about it,
All right.
and I think this is cool research. One of
this is good.
The first model that we are going to publish, and this will be published for free consumption, or for free, and this will eventually get on whatever public GitHub that we decide to make for a little project here. But it's going to be we're calling the Kelton classifier, and it's an LSTM model, deep neural net. LSTMs are just built for time series, and it's to just kind of make sure we have everything operating the way that we think we do. But this is for that data, and as I was building the data, I ran across this is how I run across all the cool stuff. To be quite honest, is just kind of validating these time series. But what I found is this thing that I've done where I accumulate the tax receipts over history, and I did the percent change. From 1 year ago, so that's what the blue line is here, and then the orange line is the 10-2 yield spread. And the big thing is that the inverted yield curve always points to a recession, right? This has happened. The inverted yield curve is called 7 out of the last 8 or whatever it is. Recessions in history, and it happened before I think the early 80s recession. It happened before the 91 recession. It happened before the 2000 recession, et cetera, right? So it inverts, and as we're seeing right now, it doesn't look like we're on the verge. I mean, we're starting to, the better than expected theme continues to roll out. And what I noticed is that you get this large build in tax receipts heading into every recession as well, right? And in fact, there's a pretty strong correlation between the tax receipts, inverse correlation between the tax receipts and the yield spread. I'm not saying there's necessarily a causal factor there too. Just to be clear, I haven't fully pressed the causal. And it doesn't matter if there's a causal factor or not. The point is they share information, and one tells us about the other. So the question is, what's different this time, right? I mean, this chart looks identical. It looks like we should be heading in to the end of a business cycle here. And I think what's happening just with this is I think the increase in tax receipts is the footprint of a growing economy, right? You have this expanding economy. You're going to start paying more taxes because of it. That is a hint on where we're going to go with this. You're going to start paying.
Quick quiz. Which deadly innocent fraud is that?
Yeah. I'm surprised Warren Mosler hasn't said, Doug, I know exactly what's going on here. I wrote a book on this. Anyone in the chat know? Anyone in the chat know?
Quick quiz.
We'll give it 1 second. It's one of the 7, possibly the last one. I mean, if they can't get it after that hint, it's like the one guy that was trolling me on Twitter. I'm like, yeah, look, if you can't get it after the hint, I can't help you. So
the classic guy. Go ahead.
So the point is, I think as tax receipts push higher, that's like the first signal of economic activity, and so of course you're going to have the spread begin to shrink, because as economic activity grows, just the cyclical nature of the way the economy works, particularly the endogenous cycle, eventually you just kind of reach capacity, and you get some sort of market breakdown, sudden push and unemployment, et cetera. So something is different this time. There's definitely something different that occurred. You'll see it in the next chart in just a second. But I do think that's why these explain each other. I think you get the yield curve inversion because there's a fear that the government's going to have to lower interest rates into the future. So they'll express that as long dated yields are pushing lower. That's how you get this kind of flat or inverted yield curve. So why isn't it that we're seeing recessionary data build up this time? And it all has to do with the next chart that I'm going to show you here, and that is what caused the tax receipts to push higher this year. So this is the national debt percent change 1 year, so effectively the deficit. Again, I like to take the accumulation of whatever it is that I'm measuring and then measure percent change acceleration from that accumulation. It gets a little bit better information out of the data. But effectively the CPI adjusted, the inflation adjusted deficit, we saw the tax receipts come from not growth in government spending before the 91 recession, before the 2000 recession, right? We were actually in a surplus heading into the 2000 recession, and same thing in real terms in 2008. So the tax receipts were draining the private sector of their savings that were being created from the private sector. The business activity was being endogenously driven, and that's why the tax receipts ultimately caused the bubble to burst because they weren't being replenished with government spending. So you can just kind of see that in this little chart that it was tax receipts lead the government spending, right? Because the government spending is countercyclical, whereas the business cycle is procyclical. It's going to continue to grow as it grows. It self-propels its own growth, but then when you get a contraction, that's when the government steps in. But this time it was different. The yellow line is before the blue line. The yellow line led the tax receipts. It funded the tax receipts. And this is what Moser, this is a point Moser makes on the seventh deadly sin, is that high taxes in the future is an innocent fraud, as he calls it, because if the government spends it, that's going to cause growth. That's not necessarily countercyclical because of that endogenous cycle. So that's why things are different this time, right? It's because we saw, endogenous, yep, Katai. So that's, I think that's what played out this time, and I think this is like the absolute laboratory case for MMT, right? It's that we're not going to see a reset. Now we could, if the debt ceiling stuff, if crap hits the fan with the debt ceiling stuff, we will see a recession, but it's going to be a recession because government spending is going to collapse again. Yeah. So this is the reason why.
So funny. We were talking about this the other week as well. How when the when the Republicans or any Tory right-wing government anywhere in the world, New Zealand, Canada, UK, Australia, whenever they do tax relief, it always has the desired effect.
Because
they're doing it in order to supposedly also raise the government surplus as well. That's their thinking. So it's like that's crazy.
No, the tax cuts just get government out of the way so business can.
Oh yeah. No, that's the story. Yeah.
You have an endogenous Joe. Jeez, oh Pete's, man, that is hilarious. That's pretty good. Oh man. Yeah. I know we're not the biggest live stream on YouTube, but by God, we have the best chat. We absolutely have the best chat. Keep the children away. Keep the children away. I'll tell you that much. This is especially as we head into hour 3. Keep the children away. After first hour, I'll keep it clean, but afterwards, no promises. So that's the answer to what it is that I'll be following up with tomorrow or Friday. And if you watch the live stream, jump in front of what I'm going to say. Say, Doug, I know exactly why. This is different this time. It's because what was the cause of the tax receipts and why we're seeing a different outcome this time. I'm reading chat here. I'm just gonna read it. I said to see napping around on the thing I do on Saturday. I guess you let me. We'll be back. I know I'll be back on Saturday soon. Let's see what else. I have one other thing that I do want to hit on agenda-wise tonight. If there are any questions you're seeing that you do need to address, let me know.
I'll go back through it. Okay. First, while you're doing your thing, I just want to plug this read here. If you don't know Cory Doctorow, how does it? Okay, let me put in the chat there. Cory Doctorow, he's a writer, and I don't know how he describes himself these days. He does sci-fi, pretty good sci-fi writer, but he also does a lot of I don't know, libertarian adjacent type stuff. Like he'd say he has friends who are sort of libertarian type minded people, but he's definitely a pretty solid MMT aware person. And just if you want a bit of a fun read, follow that story about how TikTok has been in shitification of TikTok, but also there's a link in there. If you read it, I'll just tease you with this. There's a link in there. See if you can spot it. Where there's another article by another writer that you'll follow the link to that, and he talks about this language on the internet. How language is very interesting, and people have gotten very creative to get around some of the social media or the big platform, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, wherever, where you've got words like CRACKER, which in a hacker. So Cory Doctorow also he's aware of hacker culture and so forth. This is not computer breaking computer security, but playful inventiveness is what the term.
Just for the record, you never posted the link. If you want to post that link,
didn't I?
You said plug this read, but I never saw a link come up. Maybe my chat's broken.
Oh yeah, it came up in my chat. But, I could
oh, you know what's funny? You know what's funny is it might have deleted it. That is hilarious.
It might have deleted it.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
that's interesting. How do I?
Yeah.
Okay. Cory Doctorow.
You sent it to me, so I'll pull it up real quick, and I hope my own YouTube chat won't ban me.
I break it up and put a space in everywhere.
Yeah, I'll get the link.
You remove the spaces in this.
Anyway,
yeah, it's a good story. So it's got a link to another article about how the people have gotten very creative in their language. It's a pretty hilarious read, that as well. So that's just some fun stuff that I came across this week. It's interesting. Twitter has not died, right? So I still get the odd little bits of juicy stuff to read and links to follow via Twitter. And I only really log on to Twitter once a week or so to support Douglas. And it's still a functioning platform. The way I survive on Twitter is I just don't spend too long on it.
Yeah. I wish I could say the same. I'm getting more and more addicted.
Yeah.
All right, I'm all over the place on my desktop. You guys obviously hopefully can't see any of this, but
yeah. See, Ty, I was suggesting to Douglas that Ty Keynes, he's tuning into this. All these people in our chat today, they seem to be good regulars now, and it's so great having a rapport with all of you. But I did mention to Douglas that his charts he was putting into on Twitter and all that might spark a bit of an orgasm from Ty Keynes.
the endogenous stuff.
Turns out I was right.
Yeah. The data supports what I was saying. Yeah.
Endogenous zones.
Yeah.
Sorry to derail it.
See. Yeah, I don't even know where I was going now. Oh, yeah. Okay. We're going to talk markets again for a quick second. Had a lot of comments come up. I posted my macro model, which turned bullish for the first time in almost a year. And there are a few things I want to talk about regarding markets. So give me 1 second here. Yeah, I got to post.
If Rowan Nora has really seen every MMT video ever made, how many roughly would that be? I wonder. Do you have an estimate? I do admit from time to time I head to YouTube or DuckDuckGo because I can search for videos there as well. That some come up, some very rare, interesting ones. Try to find a fresh MMT one, right? Especially from Warren or Bill or Randy or someone. And too often it just comes up with stuff that I've already seen.
I know. So I agree. That's
it's always a need. But I have to tell you, dear chat, this guy Bijou Smith you're talking to here, right? I am actually sitting in Douglas's garage or basement. I haven't quite computed it yet, but I am the sentient Mosler bot that
we finally created. Oh my God. Yeah. You're gonna derail Douglas AI for a second
time
here.
to tune me. And I'm here. I'm sitting here trying to learn, but Douglas programmed me so that I'm actually learning at the rate of human being. So I don't, although I am a sentient bot, I'm learning very slowly. And so it's going to take me a while to, fully absorb all of this, all of the, it's a slow process for a good reason, because Warren Mosler has arithmetic is embedded in MMT axioms, and so I am Gödel incomplete. So it is going to take me a time to prove things. There are true statements that I cannot prove. So just so you know, if anyone accuses me on Twitter of being a Warren bot,
that's exactly what it was built for.
Correct. That's exactly correct. It's just that I'm going to take 30 years or so to reach full.
I've programmed you for only one batch size a day, and 30,000 total epochs. So you'll get there eventually. It's actually that's what I was trying to figure out today. What is optimal batch size for your data set? It was as boring as it sounds.
Which is going to take me a few months to compute that for you. So
you know what really sucks about deep learning and about building your own deep learning models is you figure someone's had to have figured all this out, and you know what the answer is on all this stuff. You think oh, these guys are building some insane stuff, right? I mean, they've got to have all the answers. The answer literally is just try it until it works.
That's right.
That's just the answer.
Try the true method.
Yeah. Which fits me perfectly. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'll just keep trying it until it works. But we'll come back to AI. We'll come back to AI. I promise, because it's something I'm becoming more and more passionate about. And I have some thought. Real quick though, I did want to talk about markets a little bit. I posted this earlier this week on Twitter. Obviously, this is part of the kind of the main package of what the MMT Macro Trader is over on Patreon. But I promised I'd talk about this tonight. And I got a lot of questions just about this chart in specific, and what will be made public eventually, and what isn't. And then I've had a few people reach out to me as well, saying hey, what's actually the value in what it is you're doing if I'm a trader. And so I did want to talk a little bit about that, and if anyone has questions, then I can point them right to this little segment here. But things did turn very bullish as of late. This model, I've always kind of, big caveat I've always had with this is it's a little slow picking up, particularly the change in the credit cycle. And so you'll see over time the way this model works is it takes a couple weeks after the bottom for the credit cycle to fully kind of get digested by the model. But we did see things turn bullish, and we're starting to see things really play out. And again, this is just a Bayes model. It literally all it's doing is it's obviously very effective and has been, but it's just taking the Gaussian distribution of the core MMT data that I stick into it, and effectively comparing it to the four quantiles of returns for the S&P: highest, second highest, middle highest, lowest for returns. And so that's what this is doing. I mean, it's just it's an unbiased way to weigh the data that you could weigh, and so that's what this is doing. It's not necessarily, a trading. I mean, I was long well before this thing turned green for other reasons, but it is certainly a great tool to take an unbiased look at the data. And then and so that's what this is. I also have a very similar model that takes a look at volatility data, that weighs volatility data with the same, kind of with the same idea that it's not directional. This is predicting the market will go up from here. But the big thing that I did want to linger on in terms of, is the stock market MMT research worth it for you? And I respond this way to anyone who reaches out to me. I am not trying to tell you with this that you're going to make 50 grand a day on every trade that you do or anything like that. The way that I know that's very disappointing. But no, you'll make 49 grand, but no.
You mean I'm going to make reasonable returns?
Yeah. I mean, I really think that so in for those of you who don't invest or aren't active investors in the investing world, they call this alpha, right? What is it that you could make over your benchmark, right? What is it that your models can do over a benchmark? And for me, the benchmark is just the historical S&P return of about 7% year over year, right? And my thought and how I price things is really, and this is just kind of some life advice. If you have less than 25,000 in savings that you're actively investing, right? If you have less than that, that's so the other way to put it, if you have more than 25,000 that you're actively investing, then I think you should, or not should. I mean, actually, I don't. I mean, unless you're really ready to do it, I don't think you should actively trade. But if you have less than 25,000, I would say don't get into the active trading game. I mean, maybe be a market watcher on occasion. If it really looks like crap's about to hit the fan, take your money out. But otherwise, don't be an active trader. What you should really focus on is doing everything you can to increase your income and doing everything you can to save an extra couple $100 a month. I mean, that's really where you should be at, because the truth of it is the best investors, the best algorithms have made, again, the best in history is the Medallion Fund by Rentec, and that's 60% a year, right? Over the years, and it's actually been having a rough time as of late. So I mean, even then, that's reverting back to the mean. So the absolute best trading strategies that are out there that you and I are never going to have access to don't beat the market, are not making 100% a year or anything like that. And so how I came up with the price for this is, my thought is, okay, if I don't want you even using this to be an active trader, because I just don't think it's prudent for you, if you have less than 25,000 of investable cash, then 25,000 is the starting point. And if the average return in the S&P is about 7% a year, well, what's the alpha that we could generate from that? And I thought, at the very least, if you get to 10%, returns off this on average over time per year, that additional 3% is, which I think there's more alpha here than just the small percent. Then just round up to the 3%. Well, what would that be? I mean, it turns out it's about $65 a month on a $25,000 portfolio. So that's how I came up with the price, and that's usually my explanation.
That pricing worked for me. That would convince me.
Yeah. So if it's
to go back and try to earn some income, and
if it's not your thing, if it's not your thing, and if you are new to trading and you just want to tiptoe into it, that's fine, by all means. But get there. But so we are. The final thing I'll say, Bijou, we are working on a middle tier for those who are kind of just more active market watchers who aren't actively trading. But everything I give, I think I sincerely think it gives value. That'll be the end of my quasi explanation, quasi plug here. But that's how we came up with that, and I mean that's really what it. That's really the idea.
But if your thing is to support MMT, support Douglas's channel, there's plenty of ways of doing that. You don't have to become a patron.
Yeah. Drop
into the chat, make it lively. Support Douglas on his Twitter journey.
Yeah.
It's find the odd classical brainworms to try and inoculate and so forth. Lots of stuff to do. There's just so much to do. As we keep saying, we're kind of the underdogs here.
And the underdogs are winning right now, by the way. We are winning. That's the best part, man. That's the best part.
Yeah. We're accelerating.
Yeah, man. Ty, if you put out your money in Tesla a couple of weeks ago, things are looking good for you. If you put it in a couple of years or like a year ago, it's not looking good. But Tesla, a lot of these names that have been really beaten up over the last year and a half are really bouncing right now. I am not. That's the other thing too. I'm not a name picker. I still. It is something I just probably won't put much effort in for the rest of my life to try and find individual names of companies that are better than others. That is, in reality, actually. In reality, I think that is how investing should work. You should if I end up winning when it's all said and done, I'm actually putting myself out of business, because I think what I'm doing should be so ubiquitous, should be so understood that there's nothing to be had anymore, right? But no one understands actual monetary operations, the actual dynamics that are at play. I like Warren Mosler's idea of capping the price of every stock to stop
yeah,
capital gains, right? I mean, I think it should be, the stock market should be a game of individual names, of trying to decide what is the best use of my savings.
yeah.
And
Quantity, volume, not price.
yeah, yeah,
Take the gamble out of it, so
yeah,
people can just invest in what they want to
yeah,
invest in.
yeah.
But for instance, with electrification, I don't know about Tesla. I mean, plenty of other companies are making better cars, making better electric cars.
I don't know, man. Here's the thing. We can go back to AI now. We can go back to the AI discussion. I'll put the chat up. Because I there are things that rub me the wrong way.
Copilot.
Yes.
Are you talking about open?
No.
AI
No. I'm going to talk about just straight up. I think Elon Musk does have the right idea when it comes to the learning approach to get self-driving cars on the road. I know what, if you're not an American, you're like, yeah, we have self-driving cars. They're called trains. They go exactly where you want them to go. But I actually do think he has the right approach, and I do think it's unfortunate what the government has done to step in front of Tesla. Again, this isn't an endorsement of Elon. This is me just saying, I do think, from my novice AI understanding of different learning models, that Tesla actually has the right approach to how we'll ever get to kind of autonomous vehicles. That can jump us back into the AI discussion.
Do they have a bit of a what is it? What's the logical fallacy there? Psychological fallacy of the availability heuristic bias or something like that? I mean, whenever an AI crashes the car, it's big news.
Yes.
But whenever a human crashes the car,
exactly.
It just is buried in the back press.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, yeah.
Renora, by the way, just for the record, I agree. That's exactly my thought. Let me get rich first. Yeah, I mean, that's it. Every time you drive someone by, or drive by someone on the highway that's on their phone and not driving at all, right? It's like, wait a second. If every time, I mean, it's like, a plane crashes, it's going to make headline news. A Tesla crashes, it'll make headline news. But there are far many more stupid, distracted people than there are self-driving cars that are distracted crashes. But I do think the reinforced learning approach that Tesla has is probably the approach that has to work. So there's two approaches with self-driving cars. There's the we're going to map everything with LiDAR down to the very centimeter, and this car knows everything that's there, and then only needs a little bit of radar and video to just make sure it's not running over everybody, right? And then it tries to control for every variable that way. And then there's the Tesla approach, which is we're never, the tumbleweed's going to blow on the road, and you never know what you don't know. So you just need a fully autonomous neural network to fully learn all these things, and constantly taking back the data, the observations, and retraining the model to drive better every time. And I think that is the way to do it, because all it takes.
It's going to continue to get bad press, though. I mean,
it will, which is unfortunate.
Is that, like you said earlier, that an AI system can only learn what you put into it, and so like they're never actually going to learn semantics or anything. It's always syntactics. Is how proper cognitive science would say it. Cognitive scientists would say it. So you can go so far with syntactics. You can make the self-driving cars a lot safer than human-driven cars, but it's a sort of it's a political problem. So like I said, people are always going to blame the company, blame the AI, and that even though they might be a lot safer, because when they fail in a stupid way. Whereas if a human driver fails, whatever, alcohol, it's also stupid, but it's like, it's not like dumb stupid. And so,
yeah, I mean,
it is dumb stupid. I don't know what I don't know. I'm gonna twist myself.
Yeah, I know what you're saying though. Like, how could you ever let a machine do something that stupid? But I mean, it's it's. I think that's that's the slow stigma that just AI in general is going to have to get over in terms of what AI actually is. Which I really the more I get into this AI stuff and then the stuff that we're building, what we've already seen, the leaps that we've already seen, and I'm not going to give any investing advice. I don't know what, and I think that's the most exciting thing is I don't think we know what company is actually going to be the big winner in the AI world. I think that's what's going to be fun about this is it remains to be seen.
Yeah. OpenAI was clever though, and if they honestly open source it, you get more eyes on it, and I think that was a probably good idea to go in that direction. And that way, it's not endogenous. Endogenous AI learning is when the AI system is teaching itself, like it's got an actual consciousness. So that's never going to happen, right? So it's always exogenous. You always got to give it data.
We might have to debate that. We might have to. Yeah. This is one place.
No, I'm computing it in my basement here.
Yeah, this is the one.
I'm not conscious.
This is the one thing.
I'm a zombie here.
We're 5 minutes away from hour 3 when I allow us to get into these discussions. So we might. Bijou's obviously, he's obviously got the leg up in terms of the understanding on the physics of this. But I mean, I'll tell you this much: a lot of what drives human is the sensory experience that we have. It's just unnecessary to ever replicate it in a machine, right? And I'm even talking really simple stuff that like makes us tick. You don't realize it, but you are constantly aware of the sensation of you breathing, right? I mean, these are things that you're constantly aware of. The sensation of the weight of your body in a challenge. This is going to end up turning into a meditation session, but you're aware of these things, but they're just not in your train of thought, right? But that is something that is absolutely part of the human experience that you could never train an AI bot to even want to care about that stuff, right? That's not the fitness test that you would put in. Like, hey, by the way, if you start feeling this sensation of not breathing, do something to fix that, right?
The AI is tremendous. It's tremendous stuff. It's amazing stuff. I mean, it's going to help automate a whole lot of stuff that we don't have to do ourselves. But it's no substitute for human understanding and learning. Because what humans do is different. I mean, cognitive scientists have known this for years, that it's called the poverty of the stimulus. So human infants learn language at a rate they're not supposed to be able to. It's like they perform an impossible computational task. Impossible. So how do you explain that? No one has an explanation for it. And so a computation is only going to be able to do what's computationally possible. It's not going to be able to ever reach human ability, because humans are doing something different, right? Science doesn't understand it. But if you want to talk to me about it, I could give you some theories, but it's not going to be scientific because science doesn't understand it yet. It's not that we won't be able to understand in the future, but we certainly don't at the moment. And so, but you got to sort of separate these responsibilities. You want really safe driving cars, you also have to understand human frailty and human fallibility, right? You understand that, and you understand what AI systems can do for you, and sort of merge them together in a sensible way is what's sort of needed. I'm not always sure though that the private for-profit companies are going to be able to actually do that sensible merging, because they're chasing the profits. So they may open up the AI research and open source it, but they're still going to be taking shortcuts if they don't have, properly government funded blue skies research in the public interest, so that they can take risks without financial risk.
Yeah.
Take intellectual risks without financial risk.
That is the It is the one thing that kind of worries me about kind of Western dominance long term, is I think slightly more authoritarian regimes are going to find it to their benefit to really push the state-driven investment into AI, because they'll see the authoritarian benefit to AI systems, and they'll just stumble across something that's very potent, some sort of model transformer, neuron structure that is that is just kind of the end game, the final boss of AI, and run with it. Thomas, I saw your thing about the self-driving car, by the way. I think you're right. I mean, that would be my dream in the US. And I think it's the tragedy of it, is that we obviously have the capacity to just add a whole new lane to the entire interstate system that is just the smart lane, right? I mean, if you got a smart car, if you got the chip in your car that knows how to communicate with all the other cars in that lane, then you get to be in that lane. Yeah, I mean,
you're talking about smart rail. It's a train. Let's just be honest about it. It's a train by any other name. It's just modernized. It doesn't have to run on rail tracks.
Yeah.
It's a smart train. Yeah. But I also have a little bit of a beef with the whole that whole individualism. I can own my own car and go everywhere, because I don't know. I'm not sure if Steve Keen is going to prepare to talk about this, or anyone else on the energy issues. But there is a massive problem with the energy conservation. I mean, let's put it a different way. There is a huge amount to be gained from just energy conservation and not having people just drive around just because they can. I'm speaking as the sentient motorbike who loves sports cars.
This is the one thing that I know I don't know.
The rest of the world is going to have to sacrifice. The rest of the world is going to have to sit back and say, America, you love your cars, go for it. The rest of us are going to sacrifice. Right? We're going to do the energy conservation so you guys can have your sports cars. How about that?
I don't even care about I don't even care about my sports car. That's not what I care about. Maybe we should just have such a terrible rail system in the U.S. That is just an unpleasant
public transport. Gross,
unpleasant experience from beginning to end. I think if it was a more pleasant experience, God, I watch, like, every once in a while those YouTube videos will pop up where the guy's like, I rode 24 hours in the the Japanese train or whatever, and it's just it's literally an unstopped loop of this some trip through the entirety of Japan. And God, if we had trains like that, it'd be nice.
Yeah, that'd be a lot better.
Yeah, but that's not what we have. So what I have is my minivan. It's an electric. I do drive an electric minivan, just for the record. My minivan is coal burning, not gas burning, oil burning. Yeah, Amtrak. What else do we got? Bijou, got anything else? I know we do got to cut this one a little bit short of our normal 3-hour long discussion.
Yeah. You covered the 7th of the deadly innocent frauds. Did you want to explain that quiz in the end? Did we finish that? Put a bow in it or something?
The 7th deadly.
Yeah.
Yeah, just that higher. Go ahead and spell it out. Yeah.
Oh, the 7th deadly innocent fraud is that more government spending today, or higher deficits, if you like, net deficits, leads to higher tax return tomorrow. Tomorrow being a year, 2 years, whatever. So the myth is that's correct. The myth. So the statement is correct. The myth is that it's a bad thing. That's one of my favorite of the 7 deadly innocent frauds, because it's the coolest, and it's really actually one that most people kind of keep forgetting and miss out. The whole taxpayer funded myth and all that sort of thing, so it gets misconstrued, and they often missing the 7th of the deadly innocent frauds. So the fact that tax receipts are rising is a good thing, unless you want to make it a bad thing and like shrink something else as a response, or if you deliberately increase tax rates, so that the rate of taxation, if you increase if you change the law to try to raise taxes because you think you need it for your spending, then that's a bad thing. But the fact is that if a growing economy will necessarily always pretty much have growing tax receipts, because it's just an automatic. It's a counter-cyclical stabilizer. So the point is to not increase tax rates because you think you need to get the return.
Yeah.
So
yep.
growing economy should have an increasing tax receipts without any change in the tax policy. So the rising tax receipts is a sign of a growing economy. It's a good thing, but people misunderstand it. Also, I had the whole thing. I had the whole thing on that latest gold myth thing. I was watching this Star Trek spin-off series called Andor.
Oh, whoa. Star Trek?
Yeah, do you want to close your eyes? Do you want to
no.
plug your ears up for a second?
Did you just call it a Star Trek spin-off?
Yeah, Star Trek spin-off.
No.
Yeah, they were doing something with dilithium crystals and so forth.
Wait, no. Are you?
Did I get it wrong?
Are you?
Is this supposed to be Star Wars or something? Or Babylon 5?
Oh, he's trolling me, man.
Yeah,
I just got got.
Babylon 5. Babylon 5. Sorry. What is it? Hang on. Andor. Yeah, no, I'm joking.
Star Wars is dope.
It's a spin-off. I love it. Yeah, so it is a spin-off of Star Wars, but it's interesting because...
Do you want me to share your tablet? I don't have your tablet.
It's made in the UK, is it? Yeah, you can share this if you like. I think it looks like it's made in the UK. Maybe some Scottish scenery and actors. So it's pretty interesting because I just want to mention it in case you get family members. So this is a thing that maybe I'm trying to every live stream every week. I want to help people talk about MMT with their families and so forth. So it's good to find elements of popular culture, and I think Star Wars is pretty good. I mean, I know Douglas is a real fan of Star Wars and that whole sort of mythology. It's pretty awesome stuff, really. But Star Trek is another one. I haven't found it in Star Trek yet. It's interesting. I think Star Trek, maybe they have it unconsciously right.
I think they do, right? I mean, because in Star Trek, isn't it? I mean, I've never watched much Star Trek because I'm one of the cool kids that only watches Star Wars.
Oh, yeah.
But
that generation.
But doesn't Star Trek have a no money system, right?
I think so, mate. I think so. They replicate things, and yeah, it's interesting. Star Wars is very much more sort of libertarian, I think, and Star Trek is more communist. Fully luxury automated communism, that kind of thing. Anyway, the point is that on Andor, I was watching it, and I like the lead actor. He's pretty good. He came from the Mexican show about the drugs. What was it called? What was the Colombian and the Mexican and CIA drug show? What was that called again?
I don't know. I am not Mr. Pop Culture. Yeah.
It was pretty good. It was pretty entertaining show. That one, pretty good. All about Pablo Escobar and then the Mexican guy.
Yeah.
Anyway, he plays the lead on this, Mexican actor. But they're going to steal all the gold from the from the Republic, right? And I was just thinking, I was just trolling Douglas a bit. They should be dilithium crystals that they're stealing, something of real value, not the gold. So the Republic gets into a bit of a hissy fit because they're now not able to credit the bank accounts of their employees or whatever, because they don't have any more gold in order to somehow you need the gold to type numbers into the bank accounts in this universe.
I mean, our point was, and I do think this is the whole
smash the computer with a gold bar.
that even in a galaxy far, far away, if you turn to a fully monetarist system, that it leads to an authoritarian government regime.
Right.
Yeah. So
So you have to get
George
on.
Lucas is really the original MMT, or George Lucas laid the foundation.
Okay.
The rebellion was MMT.
Right.
Right. Yeah. Darth Vader was a monetarist.
The
He started
monetarist.
off as an MMTer, but he was seduced by the dark side of
Yeah,
monetarism.
he's like
And,
that side.
yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. There you go. So the other interesting bit of popular culture you might get your family to get into, although I'm not sure if it's dubbed in English, so it might be a challenge to some people to read subtitles, is Spanish show Money Heist. So they have a good season 1, and then season 2 they follow it up with going to raid the gold supply of the Spanish central bank. And it's pretty darn good, because they start off, it's like the central bankers are like in crisis mode because someone he's managed to infiltrate the bank, go 30 meters underground or whatever it is, to get the gold out of the central bank's vault, sitting there, obviously doing something useful, right, under the ground there. It's like psychologically useful, we're backed by gold. It's just sitting there under the ground doing nothing, but still, we're backed by gold.
We sent a bunch of healthy young men to go dig it up from one hole just to go stick it in another hole instead of
every so often we stick an optic fiber probe down there to make sure it's still there.
Yeah,
it's still there. Still backed by gold. And so the bank heist people, they're going to rob the gold, right? And so it's great for them because they get gold. Well, that is useful out in the private sector if you're not allowed to print your own money. But in the first series, they do print the money. It's pretty awesome. So they get both MMT stories pretty much right. And then in the end, they return the gold back to the Spanish government because they're not complete. They're good bank robbers, good in every sense. So they return the gold back. Oh, hang on. I hope I'm not spoiling the story for anyone. Oh, I shouldn't have spoiled it.
Uh-oh.
Okay, these are spoilers, people. If you haven't seen the show. But anyway, it's pretty decent because they return the gold back as lead or something of similar weight, just plated with gold on the outside. And so they take 99% of the gold and return 1% of it surrounded by lead bricks. And then everyone's happy.
Everyone's happy.
It's a great MMT story.
Might as well have been that in the first place.
Popular culture teaching opportunities. That's all I have for this week. I gotta probably head off.
Yeah,
I've got a road trip to go on.
I do want to. Josh asked a question. We'll wrap up after this. He asked a question about VR. Is he just burning money? I love VR. I hope he is successful. I can't tell you how much I love VR. Half-Life Alyx is the greatest game I've ever played. Is it the greatest video game ever? No, but is it the greatest gaming experience I've ever played? Yes. I hope he's right. I hope VR can get more adoption. But at the end of the day, if they keep making kind of arcade-style games that aren't, true immersion stuff.
Okay, but here's the thing. Here's the thing about that.
Mm-hmm.
Is that they're going to hit a ceiling of nausea.
No.
Yeah. So Michael Burry's thinking is you invest now in seasick pills.
We talked about this, because I got the ginger root. Yeah,
there's going to be a huge demand for anti-nausea medications.
I mean, here's the one thing though that I do disagree with. Here's the one thing I do disagree with, that anyone's going to want to be in that headset while they're in a meeting or something like that. Like, that doesn't do it. It's actually, that is uncanny. To be in VR around other people that you don't know. That is the binaural audio that they produce in those things. If you don't, my buddies and I will play a game called Phasmophobia in VR. And that's a ton of fun. So if you know the people and you're around them, that's really cool. But if you guys are familiar, but yeah, I hope VR can, actually this is going back to tie this all back into the AI discussion. It's kind of interesting how it is just my subjective, how I'm viewing things, but social media was forever going to change the world, and it did, but it's the way we consume it is fading. Actually, it's kind of interesting to see a lot of people like, how come everyone's dropping off of social media? Why did you drop off of Facebook? Yada, yada, yada. I mean, I think eventually social media serves up till about 25, a very social function, right? I mean, it's to connect you. And then for me, I got off Facebook when it was just, it served. I got a wife and kids. I didn't need it anymore. But I mean, social media was going to change it. But then the biggies were, VR was going to change the world. 3D printing was going to change the world, right? We're going to have all these technologies. And I know a lot of people are having fun with the AI art making, but I just don't think they understand to the extent at which AI is going to be changing their world 5 years from now, and the pace at which it can change for automation, and what the possibility here is. I hope that the MMT ideas, I hope the ideas that are being pushed by Steve King or the MMTers can be understood by the masses, so they can really get the full benefit out of AI, not as a tool to just oppress them even more into austerity, but a tool to free up so much of their time and the capacity to do creative things.
Creative stuff.
I think that's
also with VR. You can do. Oh man, I don't want to get all weird like security state, surveillance state on anyone. But with VR, you can do remote work as well. Hopefully, that kind of thing could also be a massive productivity booster.
Yeah, to be able to, yeah.
I'm just a bit weary of it all, disrupting just the gaming. It's like Noam Chomsky. I totally agree with him. Like Chat GPT, what use is it other than for homework plagiarism? and what's a great problem with homework plagiarism? Because at MIT they don't have any problem with it because students go to learn. They don't go there to plagiarize to get grades.
Yeah.
So if you're teaching kids in a fun, engaging way and it's relevant to their lives, they're not going to be on their cell phones. They're not going to be like, plagiarizing work. They're going to be doing the work because they find it interesting. So it has it. I find this whole thing about the fear over homework plagiarism. There's a fear of teachers who don't know how to teach. So yeah, I think good riddance to that. But other than that, ChatGPT is a useless technology.
I don't know, man. I don't know. I've already found it quite useful. I've already found it quite useful.
Yeah, I think he's missing a few things.
I think
still, I want to see some of the good uses and creative uses.
Like you know what? I can't get into the details, but I need to write a white paper, and I've never really written a white paper for consumption.
Okay.
And I looked up an outline for a white paper on Chat GPT, and that's what I put in there. I mean, I put in some of the things that I needed it to have, and it spit out a really good outline for me. And it was a great starting place. I mean, it spit it out and like, I mean, I obviously I had to fit in my own words into the thing, but it gave me then the jumping off point, to move forward with. So, I actually, and again, this is so one of the things I've been using recently. So OpenAI, one of their first projects was to work with GitHub and produce something called Copilot. And I think this is where AI is just going to absolutely take off, is in the business world. Copilot allows you to utilize, I mean, it programs for you, right? Now, look, you have to have some basic knowledge of programming, but to understand what you're doing, but that can take like a weekend to figure out, right? Some great uses show it with programming and verbally with Siri voice. Programming I think is where it's going to be at, and what it's going to allow the business world to do is have so much more access to the tools that we are using, right? The Granger cause tools, the mutual information tools, the statistical tools that are with Scikit, that are with stats models. I just for craps and giggles, I had it write an LSTM learning model for me, and it did. I mean, it worked. There were some few things I had to figure out, but if we were able to go from just a year ago making goofy avatar, pictures of our faces with AI to pictures that you can only distinguish from real because they have a sixth finger on their hand versus, AI generating pictures in 1 year, I can only imagine what's going to happen with GitHub Copilot, and I think that's where the benefit's going to come from, is the ability.
Benefit.
Yeah. The ability
I think
to gain access to systems that took a knowledge level that most people just don't have.
that you're going to have to take a minute or two to previously Google or DuckDuckGo.
Yes, a minute or two. But I mean,
I think a minute or two in labor saving time lookup is probably worth it. But I'm also interested in the far more creative uses, and eventually I see programming being benefiting from a creative side, because you automate away a lot of the tedious lookup stuff that you have to reuse the code to do this, blah blah blah. However, I got a few warnings about all of that, because it does generate a little bit of laziness. You still have to have good hygiene. You still have to know what you're doing. The thing isn't learning. It isn't programming for you. It's spitting out code that it looked up. And so you can see this if you just go to any website, any .com website mainly, and just take a look at the page source code. It's just horrendous. It's horrendous what automated code can do compared to what a good clean coder can do. Now, of course, to write good clean web pages and code and all that, and to basically get rid of all the advertising crap, which is such a huge energy waste in itself. That's the challenge, I think. It's like we've got to somehow decommodify, get rid of advertising and things like this, because a lot of the automated code generation comes from that sort of side of things. And so if you just look up any random web page and look at the code, it's just so much crap that could be just taken out and cleaned up. And the loading times of pages are ridiculous on some websites. It's ridiculous. And so I see a lot of the laziness in automated code as a bit of a problem. So I do agree with you that as far as labor saving time for someone genuinely trying to create good software that has a good use is fantastic on the creative side, the creativity boost. But it's also disruptive in many other ways. It's going to potentially increase a lot of the crud. and an old school programmer like myself, well, I'm only self-taught, but the older guys who were around in the 70s, they're probably having heart attacks or something, because to them it's like they see the code bloat in Windows and Apple OS, and even in GNU Linux is now getting a little bit of code bloat.
I can,
it's like it's horrendous. It gives them heart attacks, I'm sure.
I can show you. So I was putting together the LSTM model for TensorFlow, and I told I told Copilot to import all packages for creating an LSTM model. You probably need, I would say, 7 or 8 total packages, including NumPy and Pandas. So I bet there should be a total of 9 packages here, maybe 10. That would even include for import for show and accuracy, and we ended up with 28. So
it's code bloat.
It is,
and in Python it only slows you down at startup
it will.
time.
So I mean, you're right. You're right.
Still, it's crud.
Yeah,
it's crud, and it's like so gross.
Yeah,
to an old school program.
I bet anyone that's going to look at all the code that gets written by AI is going to be like, "What the hell?"
Yeah, what the hell? So I reckon there's going to be some disruption there. It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. But
it is fascinating.
I don't think you can stop a lot of the stuff, right?
Yeah.
As other tech writers have said, Ben Thompson for one, it's like it's a bit of a Pandora's box. You open it up, there's no putting it back in. Bit of a genie, and so you got to. It's like MMT. You got a system, right? You got a monetary system. Maybe try to understand it and make it work for people. People rather than work for only the bosses.
Yeah.
So if Douglas is going to go in and now he's prostituted himself, because he's now got the Chat GPT and the Copilot, and goes to his boss and says, "Hey, look, this does some super amazing stuff." See, now Douglas's boss is going to just get Douglas to do all the work. Right? So you think you've reduced your labor time, but now you've just increased the
labor time. Well, that's why you only show them morsels at a time. Right.
Oh, okay, so you're doing it smart way.
Yeah.
But also,
Yeah.
I have to say,
Yeah.
Douglas has apparently got a good boss who's really, on the
Gotta,
good side. But you
yeah.
can imagine
Oh yeah.
someone
Yeah.
going up to their
Yeah.
boss and
Yeah.
showing them all this
Yeah.
AI, and the boss says, "Great,
Great. Yeah.
here's all this work, you do
Yeah.
it."
Yeah. This is really good.
You gotta be careful with
You
the
created
cheating.
100 widgets last year. Well, good. Now you can create 1,000, and
Now
that's
you
the,
can create
yeah. That's how I'm gonna grade you. I know we're running up. We got to finish off. John, you asked a question, and we'll kind of finish off with this about minting the coin.
Yes.
Minting the coin obviously is a gimmick, but it's a gimmick because the initial gimmick of the debt ceiling is even more of a gimmick. Whatever it takes
Well said.
is the path that we need to take, because if the debt ceiling doesn't get resolved, that's bad for everyone. And it really just needs to be. The political decision, the political discussion needs to stop once the budget is agreed upon, and that's when it stops. And it's pretty pathetic that this is where we're at. So we'll see. They'll fight it back and forth. It's not any, to be honest, not anything I follow. It's fun. I'm having some fun with it, and I'm sure I'll do a YouTube video sooner or later. Where I create some sweet AI art to have Janet Yellen holding a platinum $1 trillion coin, but will Powell accept the coin if the Treasury sends it over? Doesn't he have to, though?
I don't think there's a slot in the computer for it. That's the problem. You're gonna have to engineer a slot. Someone go in there and with their jigsaw.
Yeah, do you know why eventually, though? And this is exactly what Bijou would say. I know it because I programmed the Bijou bot. Is Bijou would say, yeah, Powell will have to accept it because the banks will demand that he accepts it, because Wall
Street will demand it.
Yeah, they will ultimately demand it as they're forced to shed their assets because the financial system is getting crippled. So that is why Powell will ultimately accept whatever the Treasury tells them to do. Let's see. Yeah, but Powell, he basically demurred and said Congress has to raise the debt ceiling when asked if he'd done independent legal analysis. Said, I'm going to leave it at that. Yeah. I think ultimately he will do whatever it takes with, depending on how bad things get. So
yeah, the Fed can engineer the hole in their computer to accept the coin, but the Treasury has to give them to them. So
yeah, I will say Josh Hawley, I think that's his last name, came out today and said they should exempt Social Security and Medicare from the debt ceiling. So that would be, billions of dollars of space that would be immediately freed up. And if it looks like there's a Republican GOP movement to allow that, then I think that would be the resolution, the short-term resolution here. That would be, the answer. Yeah. So I know Bijou's got to get hitting the road here, so we're going to go ahead and wrap things up. And it's been another great week, and I'll let Bijou have the final word for tonight.
Golly gee. Can I do an exit? Yeah.
Of course.
Golly gee, Douglas. So I don't know if the Mosletron GT 9000 can overtake the Krieger's cart and horse this time. It's dire situation for the debt ceiling. So Larry Lucifer Summers poured all that gold dust sand into the Mosletron gas tank. There's no time for Mosler to stop. Dump the gold, refuel. So what can be done? What can be done? Because the Mosletron has to catch the Krieger's cart, or Krugman's going to fall off the tax pay for cliff and be lost forever. Only the Mosletron can now turn Krieger's around. Let me out of your basement, Douglas. Folks, so tune in next week. I'll be back in Douglas's garage. Find out if the Douglas got the
he's not getting out of the garage. He's not getting out of the garage. He has no legs. I didn't program that.
You find out whether I put in the gold dust filter in the Mosletron, or was I too late? Dire times for the people of Gotham, I fear. Tune in next time on the same MMT channel.
That was great. Have a great week. Have a great rest of your week. Have a great weekend, everyone.
Bye.
We will be back in a week. Take care.
Take care.